All right. So let's resume our topic for our fifth lesson of macros, which is iterative processing. Now, to resume our topic, in our last session, you had seen how one can validate the parameters, and of course, we can write conditional programs within macros, right? So now, in this chapter or in this topic, which is iterative processing, now you people are already aware that in base SAS, when you was learning about data manipulation techniques, you learned one of the technique called do loops. The same thing in your macro programs. If you are going to automate a program and write a macro, within a macro, there is a situation where you need to process your data iteratively. The same or the repetitive statement, to avoid it to be written multiple times, you can always write the loop, and this loop techniques you can write within macro as well. Okay. So let's understand how you can write iterative programs within macro, its syntax, and some few examples. So objective here is will execute SAS macro language statements iteratively and will generate SAS code iteratively as well. So let's understand the same through a business scenario. So it's telling more applications might require iterative processing. So the iterative person do statement can execute macro language statements and generate SAS code. So because we are writing macro program and we are going to write iterative programs of do loops within macro, the syntax would be starting with person do. Of course, you know your do iterative statements end with end, but because it's within the macro, it's going to be preceded with a person sign. Okay, so it's a review slide. If you remember your calls input text routine, which is a statement which creates a macro variable within your data step. So you are aware that we are creating here a macro variable called country, which will have the values for every row of this custom country name to be set as a country macro variable. And you know that this will concatenate by left aligning your underscore and underscore value. Now, underscore and underscore, you know, it's the counter of your data step iteration by default, which is always created in PDB, correct? So this will be concatenated with country. So when underscore and underscore value is 1, this will be as country 1, and country 1 will take the value of the existing column coming from this variable data set, which is country orient.country. So this first row will be the value of country 1. So if you look into this by using your person put underscore user underscore command, you know it will show you all user defined macro variable list from your global symbol table into log. So this is how you get the macro variables created. So depending on number of rows in this country name column, so those all will be concatenated with this country, where it will be providing single macro variable value for every country respectively. Correct? And it's telling here that if you have observed this data step carefully, you have created a temporary variable with end equal to option telling no more. So it's no more means, you know, it's a temporary variable. You can give any name. So end means it is the end of the file marker for this country. That means when it is processing the last observation, it should create a temporary variable no more, and it is created with this keyword end equal to. And that is why you are using it here, telling if no more. That means if you remember earlier, we were using it as last, correct, as the temporary variable name. Here they have used as no more. So if no more, then again calls input text to create a new macro variable number of rows, which the value will give you at the end as underscore n underscore. That means when it is processing the last observation from country data set. So country data set total has only 7 rows. Hence, underscore n underscore at the last iteration will be 7. So it will be the macro variable value for this macro variable will be 7. So this is what you get the macro variables from your data step with calls input text. So you are creating or with two calls input X, you are creating your country macro variables and number of rows macro variables. Correct? I hope this slide is pretty clear and it's
I
become
have
a
just
revision. Yes,
is there only 7 rows in that data set? Or
yes.
oh, okay. I thought is we are creating like distinct value because each value is separate, right?
No, it's a calls input X routine
Oh,
where
yeah,
it's creating a macro variable country. So depending on how many rows, so this data set has only 7 rows.
yeah. Okay.
Therefore, all those 7 rows is been creating as individual macro variable. So
Mhm.
this underscore n underscore, that means when data set attrition is 1, this underscore n underscore macro variable value is 1, correct? So hence it will be country 1. So the first row name is Australia. Hence country 1 macro variable value is Australia. Understood?
Yes.
Again, when it moves into the second iteration, it reads the second row of observation of country. So the country second value is Canada. But because of this syntax, it will create a macro variable country 2. Hence, it takes the value country 2 as
Okay.
Canada.
I just want to make sure is there only 7 rows in that?
It is only having 7 rows. That is why you are getting this number of rows macro variable value as 7. So if you want to check this data set, we can always check it within your studio. So you can also check Orion.country, go into your library and check country column, country table and see whether it has 7 countries, which has 7 rows. So meanwhile, my studio gets initiated, you just check into that table. So Meena, even you can check and let me know. So did you see? You have only 7 rows in country table, right?
Yeah, I'm checking Ashwini, just a second.
Okay, no problem. All right. So first and foremost is we have to create a
Yes,
library
it
for
is.
your macro. So this is what my libname statement is. And I have a library for all my macro data files with the name as Orion. So
Yes, I
within it,
checked it.
see,
It has
you
7.
checked it, correct? So you have 7 rows. Fine, Meena?
Yeah, yes, Ashwini.
Yeah. So see 7 rows, 6 columns. So this is columns and we were working with country name to be taken as the value for your macro variable creating as country. All right. Okay. So simple loops. So example display the same thing what you are doing it with the data step. It's telling you that why always write a data step and then execute it. Why don't we use the same concept while using your macro with do loops? And that is what this program is. So see, you're creating a macro called put loop. Okay. So because it's a macro program, we know the syntax for do loop also starts with %do. I equal to 1, 2. Again, this 2 is within your macro. It's a syntax for your do loop. This 2 will also precede with %sign, ampersand rules. Okay. So put country ampersand I is ampersand ampersand country ampersand I. So this is what it's trying to tell you, that ampersand rows is actually a macro variable which is going to create the number of rows from your data. Correct? So this was your num rows. Okay, so that's what you're writing. And you're checking these values within a loop by writing %put. So earlier we were doing the same with the data step. We wrote %put user defined or underscore user underscore, and you was checking the list of your macro variables. Instead of every time writing this %put, you can write this macro and you can simply call this macro. So within this macro, it's writing a loop that it will process this statement for %put 7 times. So see, it's 1 to ampersand %2 to ampersand num rows. So ampersand num rows is this macro variable, which is 7. So you get the start point and the end point of your loop. Correct? So it will execute person put statement telling country ampersand I. That means when I value is 1, it will represent as country 1, which should show you the value as ampersand ampersand country ampersand I. So this is indirect referencing, which will refer to this value for your whichever macro variable you are referring. So it will be country 1. So that means it will be Australia. So your syntax for do loop is same like your base SAS, but these keywords do, to, by, and are keywords. Hence, they are written within your macro. Therefore, they have to be preceded with %sign. All fine? Understood?
Almost.
Okay,
Actually,
I'll
that
just show you. I'll just show you.
yeah, that numbers we have created in first program, right? So it is on the in the same syntax.
It's actually the connection of your first program itself.
That's
I'll
what I
just show
wanted
you.
to check. Like it will
It's
come under
the
the same.
connection of your same program. So it's demo D07 for lesson 5.
But they are showing instead of writing that program, we can write this way also, right?
No, this is, see, this program is with person put statement. We are
Yes.
not at all doing this. So see, this is the program where you are creating this macro. Either which way you can create the same thing by using this ProcSQL. See, with ProcSQL country name, so you can write this way, correct? And you are creating a macro variable num rows, which is, by default, SQL always has a default macro variable creating depending how many rows it's been processing or what is the end or total rows gets processed with SQL. You have a default macro variable SQL obvious, correct? So if you check this person put, it will give you the list of macro variables. So either you write a data step with calls input text to create this series of macro variables, or you use ProcSQL where you can use this listing, customer country name with into clause. You can create this macro variable. Now country 1 with hyphen, it indicates that you are creating a macro variable country 1. So depending how many rows it's been processing, every row will create a country 2, country 3, country 4, like this, that many macro variables for every row on this data set, and for this column those values will be saved. Hence it's the endpoint or total number of rows. It will be default a macro variable when you are processing with SQL. There is a macro variable of SQL which gives you the count of number of rows been queried, right? So it's the same thing which we are doing it. So if you want to see, if I execute this, so there are two techniques to create macro variable. Either you create your data step, okay, or you use ProcSQL. So when I use this person put statement to check user and or user defined macro variables, so you'll get this message in log. So see, ampersand SQL total rows is 7, okay, and this is your country variable. It also has num rows. All right, got it?
Yeah.
Okay, so instead of, now suppose you might have read or kept this as a program, or you might have create a macro and you want to check this after calling this macro, you want to check this. So this you can write it within your macro program, which they have used here like this. So you write put loop. See the name of the macro program itself, they have given put loop. So you know that you can use person do or do loops to check the same thing with your person put statement. Okay, so you're calling this. If you want to check, you can write options. And compile equal to or object and logic So we don't have any logic in this, but still I'm writing it and symbol there. So let's first create a macro. See, your macro is created. No errors during compilation. Now let's call. So it's person put loop. It consists of a macro statement of person put, where we know this is indirect referencing. So it's telling when your do loop is started processing. Okay, right from here. So it's telling beginning and execution of your put loop, because you called your put loop. So it's telling macro variable num obvious resolves to 7. So a do loop is beginning. See index variable I. So starts the value as 1, because you have in your program telling I equal to 1. Correct? So when it is the first iteration, its value is telling is I. Its top value is by default coming as 7. Why? Because in your program, you have given ampersand num rows. So ampersand num rows is a macro variable which saves the value of total number of rows, which is default, which you have created. So it's telling now stop value is 7, and it is going to increment by default by 1. Why by 1? Because in your program, you did not give any increment value. So default, this will keep on incrementing this loop by 1. Okay. So then when you look into, or when SAS looks ahead, it has a macro statement of person put. Now you know what person put does. It writes the respective whatever statement with put statement into log. So because this consists of macro variables, it's telling macro variable I. Why this I? Because we have used ampersand I, and we know that anything when during your program of your do loop, this I is actually the macro variable which has been created. So it's telling this I value in the first iteration, it's getting resolved to 1. So it is the first iteration of your do loop cycle. Okay. So this ampersand country, so it's telling it's 2 ampersand resolves to 1. Why? Because it's indirect referencing, right? So it uses forward rescan rule. So 2 ampersands resolves to 1, whereas this ampersand I is resolving to 1. So at this first time, it is reading as country 1, which resolves to the value as Australia. So your first macro variable, which is user defined, it tells you that it is country I is Australia. Same way, when it goes, when end is encountered, your I will increment to 2. It checks within the loop whether this I is within the loop. Yes, it's within the loop, so it enters this. Again, it will read this statement to put the statement, or with person put. Again, with person put, it checks the value. Now its ampersand I will result to 2. So this will result to ampersand to 1 ampersand. So I is 2, so it will resolve as country 2. So the second variable for your ampersand country 2 value is Canada. So this is what it's trying to tell you, that instead of writing this person put like this with a simple statement, you can write this person put, call it within your macro in this program like this. So it's just trying to give you the introduction of person do, person end, which is your macro iterative do statements which you are writing it within a macro program. Simple. Understood now?
Actually, I have one query here. So do we really have to give 2 ampersand for that indirect references if you give one?
It's a better way to always write indirect referencing, because in one scan it will not actually go into the second iteration, right? So safer side, just try to use it, because in case if it does not resolve it correctly, so better to use double ampersand.
And if you use single here, then it will resolve or not?
It will resolve, but let's try how it works. Why? Because it has, see, when we are writing double ampersand, because when you are writing two macro variables concurrently or adjacent to each macro variable, it may not give while scanning the same result, because when it has to read it as single ampersand, okay, so when it is single ampersand, so in first thing it will read it as ampersand country. So do we have any macro variable ampersand country in your data which you have created? Then it will go and read as ampersand I is 1. Okay, so it's better to always use double ampersand when you have two adjacent macro variables written. See, it's giving you a warning. So what warning? Understood now?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not resolved.
As I said you, it will first read, it will try to go into your macro processor.
Check the whether the
Ampersand content. I think she left, right, Meena?
Yes, I think she's having some problem.
Yeah, I think so. There is some problem.
All right, I'm sorry, I had a network issue. So I had disconnected. I'm so sorry for the interruption. Okay, so let's begin. So we were here. See how it's resolving. Correct? So it's not resolving correctly. Right? So that is the reason why we use double ampersand. Okay, I'm so sorry for the interruption. I had a network issue. All right, so let's move. Am I audible to you people?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so this is what your log was giving. I hope now you understand why we have to provide double ampersand. All right. So they are just giving you and heads that one can write a program of simple do loop instead of writing it this way. It's just an introduction for you to give this person do how you can write it within your Mac with your simple person put statement. All right. So this you get introduced to person put or sorry person do. So simple loops. That's why it's an example. It's a simple loop example with the same person put statement. You can write it with your macro. So display a series of macro variables in SAS log by repeatedly executing person put into a macro loop. So this is what the same thing you were saying it when you were using person put underscore user underscore, right? So it's the syntax for your do loops. So what is this? So it's telling it simple loop statements. It's similar like your base SAS, only your keywords are preceded with person sign and they are valid only inside a macro definition. Yes, because you know percent sign preceding any of these keywords, like we saw with your conditional if then else, they were also valid with preceding percent sign only within your macro definition. Same thing is here. So this ampersand or this index variable which is created is always a macro variable which is created in a local symbol table if it does not already exist in another symbol table. So start and stop and increment values can be any valid macro expressions that resolves to integers. Same like your base SAS. The percent by statement clause is optional. As you know, default increment is 1. This text, whatever you've been writing, you know that even if it is an any numerical assignment statement which is performing any calculation, because it's a macro language, you know it is going to be a text. So whatever this text could be, this text could be either constant text or a macro variable or an expression or a macro statement or a macro call. Because it's within a macro, this is going to be a text one. All right. Okay, now answer this poll. Which statement correctly creates an index variable named R?
C.
Yeah, see.
C,
I'm a,
are you sure? Yes, as per your syntax, person do I equal to. So
One.
here I we never precede with ampersand sign or percent sign, correct? So it's by default a macro variable created. While referencing in the program, we refer it as ampersand I, but in this syntax is simple I. Of course, this two is also a keyword. It has to be preceded with percent sign. So start and stop point. Okay. All right. So now the scenario here is it's telling import a series of text files into corresponding SAS data sets. Now, if you remember, we had used your data step to import or to create from your raw files, which is your DAT files, you were creating SAS data set. If you remember, we had used in-file statement and we had used formatted input statements, correct? So the same thing they're telling at a go in one step, all these three raw files, which are .dat files, which has the informations for orders placed in the year 2007, 2008, 2009. So you write a program in such a way that in one program, it will read these files and it will create your SAS data files respectively with the name as year 2007, 2008, 2009. Same raw files with a macro program. In one step, you're creating SAS data sets. Okay, so this is the scenario. Now for it, you are going to write a macro, read raw, you give a parameter, first starting from, or you give the first value is 2007, last value is 2011. You write a do loop statement, percent do here is equal to ampersand first to ampersand last, which is 2007 to 2011. You are going to create data steps or data sets. Hence, you are writing a data step within this do loop. You are telling data year equal to, or sorry, year ampersand year. So this year will be your, this text, which is year, and this year will be your macro variable, which is your do loop value. Okay. And within this data step, you write in file, telling your path, your raw file name, which is also preceding your value, and because you know .dat file. Now it's giving two periods because one period will act as a file delimiter and one period is the delimiter where it has to stop reprocessing or stop reading your year. Correct? Input statement, and you give the columns to be read. So first column, second column, third column, and its format, how it has to be read. Run. And for this do, and this amend is to end your raw file. So option print m logic, and you call it with your first value as 2008, last as 2010. So you can, if you have series of raw files like this, you can read it depending on how the raw files you have to read with the year values. So this is what it's telling you because of your M logic. It's telling your do loop has been processing. Your value is now 2009. Loop will iterate again and your data step, it started processing. It's giving you the data set name as 2009. Infile statement is read. Your input is read. It's telling that data set is created. So like this, it will keep on processing until it is for the year 2010. Okay. So this is what it is going to read. So let me show you
But
this also.
Ashwini, while calling, we are giving first
Yeah,
year
so you
is
can call any year, no? You can call any year. That's what they're telling, that they have just given us 2008 to 2010, and it was just an example about showing you a partial log of starting from 2009. Okay, so let
With the
me show you.
parameter, we can
Yeah, in the parameter you can give
call.
any range of, yes, any range of year. So where is your raw files? Order dot dat. So do we have any more?
Yeah, it's there. Order fat dot. No.
Now you have this order 2007, order 2008, 2009, 10, 11. So these are all the DAT files. Agreed? Yes. So
yes.
this raw files, you have to now read it into SAS. So we have a code for it. So it's demo D08. All right. So we have to change this path, correct? So the path here we have for your order. So let's check the path for it. Just paste it here so that it's not going to overwrite this value. So I'm going to take it this. Correct? So this will be like orders as your simple text, and ampersand here is nothing but your macro variable, which is going to be as per this value. Hence, it's like this. All fine? This has to be your. All right? Fine?
Yes.
So first thing is, let's check for your macro bin printed. So it's compiled without any errors. Okay, 13 instructions and space of storage is 440 bytes. Let's call it from 2008 to 2010. See, year 2008, 2009, 2010. So check your log. So you called your read raw with parameter values 2008 to 2010. So because of mlogic, it's telling beginning your execution for this macro read raw. Parameter is first, which is resolving to value for 2008. Parameter last is resolving to 2010. So it's telling macro variable first and last value is this because of your symbol gen, it's telling you this values. Now because of mlogic, it is checking the logic for your do loop. Is beginning index variable, which is your year variable. Start value is 2008, stop value is 2010, and the value is incrementing by 1. So your macro variable here is resolving as 2008. So see, your data step has been created. So it's telling because of mprint, the underlying SAS data or SAS code of your macro is data step. So you had given the name as year ampersand year. So this year is a text ampersand year, which is your macro variable of your do loop, is resolving to 2008. So the name of the data set is taking is 2008. All right. So in file, your raw file path Here also this was a macro variable &8, correct? Oh, ampersand here, it's resolving to 2008. So see, with person or with put statement, it will read the rows of your raw file in this order of columns. And hence it's giving you a note that because of in file, it's telling this is the path of your raw file been read. Okay. And it's telling 87 records were read from this raw file, minimum record length, maximum record length, and the note is telling dataset work.year 2008 is created with 87 observations and 3 variables. And that is why in your output you see 2008 year dataset created. Got it? So this is why your macro is saving your time of processing and automating of your code is simple. Simply write a do loop. The same statements is repetitively processed 3 times for this given values. So the parameter while creating was given this values, but while calling, you can call any values. All fine?
Yeah, but in log, they are just showing for 2008. They are not showing.
No, it is showing here. See, it is going to work for all the rows. So
Oh,
this
okay.
was for the year 2008. Then when you scroll down, it's working for the year 2009. And when you scroll down, it is going to work for the year 2010. So see your data set 2010. And that is why you have the data set 3 all created. Got it?
Yes.
Whereas in your slide also, they can't show you the whole log, correct? So it's a screenshot. Hence it's telling partial SAS log. Therefore, it was showing you only simple. This was important to show you on slide. How it is showing or how it is processing. And the same thing, we saw it here also. See?
Yeah, got it.
All right. So this is what your do loops is making your tasks simple. The same thing you can work with generating data step or data dependent code. So before working on this, try this all the 3 demonstrations. So which demonstrations? It's for lesson 5, demo 6, demo 7, and demo 8. So the codes are here: demo 6, demo 8, demo 7, demo 8 for lesson 5. So let's move on with the next concept. So next thing is generating the data-driven code or data-dependent code. So if you look at this, it's like it's a macro, okay, where it's called with the dataset name as a parameter value, comma, your another variable as a country. So when you call this split macro with this 2 parameters, which is data and var, with the dataset name and country column as one of your var value. So it's creating 3 data or so many data sets. So we know that from a single data step, you can create multiple data sets depending on this statements, correct? So this is a simple SAS data step where for a single data set, from a single data set, you create multiple data sets with this condition telling when country value is AU, then output to AU. When country value is CA, output to CA. Remember this code? The same code, when you call this split, is showing you in the log. This is your original data set. But instead of again doing it as your base SAS coding of data step, where the same statements of when is repeated, only these values are changing, why don't we use the same to automate your program and create a macro variable with do loops? Okay, so that's what we'll be creating this name of data set by writing certain do loop statements in your macro programs. So see, you're creating a macro called split. So its first step is, if you want to do the same thing, now you are going to create a macro called split. So first step is store unique data values into macro variable. So for that, you create a macro variable split. You are giving the parameters for it is data and var. Within it, you are writing proc sort to sort your data. So ampersand data. So why it's giving ampersand data? So we are not at all restricting this macro to be created only for a specific data set, because the same macro you can use it for various data steps or data where you have the same concept or same logic, that from a single data you have to create multiple data sets, but the data set may name and the data set name may change, or even the variable which is going to be used to split the data values accordingly, this can also be changed. But ultimately this macro should be a common macro, that whenever you call any data and a respective variable, it should still give you the result. Okay, hence it's telling ampersand data, so that you can write any data set while calling. Keep that macro variable which will be sorting it on it, and of course you will be creating a new data which will be saved with sorted value, and you are going to remove the duplicates. All right. Okay. Now we will be creating series of macro variables by using a data step with calls input text, but you are not creating any new data set, but calls input text works only into a data step. Hence you are writing a data step with underscore null underscore as your keyword. Set is the sorted data variable or data set name, and you know it's the temporary variable you are creating last, which is an indicator of end of the file marker. With calls input text, you are creating a macro variable val, which will be series of macro variables on every row of this macro variable which has been created, okay, on which you are sorting your data. So if it is last observation, then again you create a macro variable count, which will give you the number of count of your input data, that is number of rows been processed. Person put underscore local underscore %m and split. Now underscore local underscore is nothing but we are going to check this macro variables been created only for this macro which is called, so it's a local symbol table. All right. So you call this split to check this values, and this is what it's showing you, that count is 7, input data is customer, and this is the series of macro variables, and where is country. All right. So this is first part, okay, where you are checking this whether it's creating appropriately. Now you are going to create on every this data value a separate data set. So that will be a second part, which is the second part of your data set, where you are writing the name of the data set should be created by using a loop. So when I value is 1, okay, so it's telling person do I is equal to 1 to ampersand count. So it's this loop of your name of the data set should be run 7 times, because we know this count is coming from here, which have 7 rows coming from the data which you are processing here, which may be country. So depending on number of rows, your do loop will give the name of your data set accordingly. So this name of your data output data sets will be created by this loop. So ampersand ampersand val ampersand I, accordingly it will solve your data set's name. Then your set statement of your input data set, which is this, which is going to be a sorted data which you are using it. Okay. Select ampersand val is the same select statement. It's like this, ampersand val means a country. Okay. So the syntax is again, now you know that this is a repetitive statement of when we were using. So instead of writing the repetitive statement, why don't we use a do loop? Hence, it's telling person do I equal to 1 to count. So this single statement will repeat 7 times on this loop. So it is the variable value which will be resolved, and output should go to ampersand val, ampersand ampersand val, ampersand I, which is the name of the macro variable, which will be created as the name here. End for do loop, otherwise end. So this is how your data step will work with loop. It's just a self-understanding. I'll give you some few seconds to go through this step carefully, and then we can move ahead. So look into this code carefully, understand what it is doing. Yes, Pragati, what's the question?
In parameter, when we give value without, mac, data is equal to without value, right? Var is equal to, then while calling, we give value for that.
Right.
But here, I don't understand. Like we are not giving here value also. While calling also, I can't see any value. So I'm
No,
little
it is
confused.
general a macro which is creating. So this macro is writing a data step, and this data step is having do loops. So when you call, so see now when you call, so it will give you exactly this value. So I'll show you this. Okay, one sec. So it's demo D09. So this is part one. Okay, just understand. So it's while calling we are giving the values, but while creating we are not giving the values.
Yeah, yeah. Yes,
Okay, so
yeah.
this is your first part. Okay, where you are simply showing that it's creating list of macro variables and you're sorting it. So it's just a macro program. It's a general macro program. You can call it on any data set.
Okay.
Okay, so it is a general macro, but now I call it by using this
Macro
oren.country and
values.
var as country. So when I call with this split, it will give me proc sort and your macro variable created. So what is the underlying code? So see, its underlying code was proc sort. Before it, it was sorting. So it's sorting which table? Oren.country. Why? Because you had called this data as oren.country. And your by statement is your var. So therefore, your by variable is country. And within this data step, we had used keep country out as a new variable or new data set, no do. That is remove duplicates. And this is the sorting done. And what is the second portion of this macro after sort? Creating macro variable. Correct? So what macro variable it's creating? Val and count.
No.
So while val is, it's going to concatenate with the number of
Number.
iterations with the values of var. Hence, when you check this log, it is showing you this. Because we are using person put underscore local underscore. Local is the local symbol table created for every macro with parameter list. That means whenever we create or we call a macro, if you remember, a macro with a parameter list will have its own local symbol table, and that local symbol table is deleted once this macro processing is over. Hence, we want to check the values of this parameters being created. Hence, we are writing person put underscore local underscore within your macro itself. If you remember when we were doing parameter values for macro definition, you had got introduced to local symbol table, correct? So local symbol table is always created for macro when you have parameter list. So whenever these parameters are created, it is not going to be saved in global symbol table because it is not created via person pledge statement, but it is created within your macro. Remember? Hence,
Yeah.
it will create only a macro local symbol table for split. Hence, you want to see those values. Therefore, when you check your log, it's telling you this split has its own local symbol table and it is having this macro variables created. So what are these macro variables? Because you have used set value, okay, it's telling input is var, ampersand value it will show, data value it will show, and it will also show you count value. Hence, it is showing you total number of rows count is 7. Data set which has been processing is orient.country. So this is the macro variables created on every row, and var variable is country, and it's the end of your macro execution split end. Got it now? So this was the first portion. Now second portion is depending on this all values, you have to create individual data sets. Correct?
Okay. Mm.
So ideally, if you have observed this data, which is your customer, we have here its country. So if you check this customer data, it's a huge data and we want to create a data set for every country That means if there are customers coming from USA, I have a data set only for US. If there are customers from Denmark, I want only data of DE and so on. So if you remember earlier, we had got introduced while we were seeing creating multiple data sets from a single data, we were writing same thing that you want to create UA, you want to create DE, you want to create suppose Canada, so on. And this data set has to be created from input data oriented customers. Correct? And you were telling, suppose you write select statement, select for your country column, because this country from this data set gives you the country code, correct? So from this country code, you are going to split your data sets when you are telling in your data for country, if you had US values, output should be going to which data set? US, correct? When So what are you doing? You are writing the same code repetitively, same statements or same lines. Are you getting it? So the same thing you can automate by writing your macro with do loops. That's what they are showing you. So it's a simple thing, but you are using do loop. Getting it? So it was the same thing I'm doing it with your base SAS code. And you know it has to be and with otherwise and you run this. Correct? So from a single data set, you are creating multiple data sets
For
by
end,
writing this.
for end you need do.
No, we are using
Otherwise
select
do,
when.
no?
We are using select when. Na? In select when never have do.
Okay.
This is otherwise only for this condition if it's not true. And end means end for this all select.
Okay.
We are not writing if then do, right?
Yes.
So 3 data sets, CAD, USA. You see, same data step, repetitive statements, and it's telling from input data source, customer, which has 77 observations. It's creating 3 data sets with so many observations respectively. And you see this, USA, see all countries US. So if you see
Separate data with
yes.
separate country.
So that's what they're trying to tell you, that if you're doing with base SAS, it is going to consume your coding time, right? And your processing time. But why don't we write a simple code of macro where it is automated that next time you are not going to be only dependent on this customer data, but now while calling, I can call your country data also. See now, country, because if you remember, this country is the data set. So let me show you this. Yeah. So where is this country? So remember this country data? It's the same thing. So why don't we just simplify this country, but it does not have country as a data column. Yes, we have country. It's all showing US. All right, so it's having US only. But like this, if you have another data set where you want to segregate the values, you can do it, right? So do we have any other data where you have column country, which will work to segregate your data? You have customer name, customer type, employee. Let us check for employer this. Okay, so let's now the same program. I call it as foreign dot employee. One second. It's hang for a second. I don't know. I don't know what's happening here. One second. So you can open that demo D09A, and you can try calling it with some other customer, employee, and a country column. So I'll show you once my studio also resumes back.
Okay.
All right. Now what I do is I change this to employee underscore address. Address or addresses. Employee addresses. Okay, and where is country. So let's first I open up the options and compile equal to all and can print and logic. All right, okay. So now see
Options. You just wrote option.
that will work. So not an issue, even options or option is all fine. So it's highlighting as blue. Okay. I'm calling it with the new data set name employee underscore addresses. And of course, with this also I have a column called country. All right. So see, there are 4 counts. It's creating 4 variables because in your data you have uppercase AU, uppercase US, small case AU, small case US. Got it? So it's a general code which you are writing, but while calling, you can call on any table. Agreed?
Yes.
Same thing, which is on your slides. So while calling, you can call on any data. So you can call it on customer. simple first part, okay? It's just first part where you're creating macro variables. You have not introduced the second part of your data step, creating multiple data sets, as you had seen with your select when statement earlier. So which was this data, create US DECA, set Orion dot customer, select. So select is an alternate of your if then else, correct? So select, you are writing on country variable. When the country variable value is US, you are telling it should create a new data set by outputting to US data file. When, see what is happening, your coding time is extending, correct? So when it is DE, you should output to DE. You need to automate the same code. Instead of typing the same statement n number of times, why don't we make a macro program? And the same statement of your data step, can't we use a do loop in your macro program? Yes. Hence, we are going to use do loop. Okay, so it's that simple. It looks complicated, but it's very simple because it's going to simplify your task of coding. The same code of your data step, you're writing here into a loop. So that's what your next code would be. Part B. Which includes your data step. Right? So what is this data step? That you are creating a data set. Now remember, you are writing multiple data sets, US, DE, CA. So this data sets, you can write it coming from a do loop. So when the value is 1 to whatever the number of values is from this count, so it will be 1 to 7. So it's telling ampersand val, ampersand I. So ampersand val is whatever the value, it will automatically take that data set name when it is I. So when I value is 1, that means it's count whatever the number of rows. So it will be val1. Val1 will be your country column that is from your data set, suppose US. So in the new data set name will be US. And set your input data set. So your select when statement. So see how many statements of when you were writing. So I had selected only 3 data values. Hence you had only 3 when. But what if you had like this 20 country codes? Are you going to write this when statement 20 times? So it's better to use your macro. So that's what it's telling. This your select statement. You are using the when statement to be iterated that many times. Hence, if it was 20 code of countries, the same when statement will iterate 20 times. And accordingly, your data sets will be created. Understood? So it looks complicated, but it's very simple if you look into the code carefully. So now the whole code of split, which was of creating this part and your data set, I'm writing and combining into a single macro called split. And then when this macro of split is created, I'm calling the split by giving my data set name. So while calling, I'm calling it with a data set customer and analysis variable var. So when I call it, I get individual 7 data sets created. So see, AU, CA, DE, IL, TR, US values. So in one go, you have created multiple data sets. So like this, if you had 20 codes of country, so it's saving your time by using this macro. So see, the same macro is repeating 7 times for your do loop. See, your when statement. So see, it's telling you do loop begins. Okay, so this was the first part. Where is your data step part? Here. See data sets name. So why these names are coming? Because the name of your data set also you're giving it into loop. So again, this is getting automated, right? So when you check your log, so this is what it's telling. It's 1 to 8. So whenever it's 5 for this, it's represent val1. val5, and val5 is nothing but your whatever the respective variable values it's been resolving. So val7 it's resolving to ZA. So this is the ZA. Then val6 is resolving to US. Hence it is the name of the data set US. And from where it's coming? It's coming from here. So sorry, here. Getting it? So this is the name of the data sets. Okay, in your data statement. And this is your set statement. And this is the macro to create, to read your where statement as per your country value. So your country value currently it's telling whatever the value it's resolving, it's telling it's AU. Hence it will create a data set and it will read all the AU values to be read into your output data set AU. Understood? So when your I value is 2, your val value is going to be CA. Hence, it is going to resolve val value to CA. Hence, when the value is CA, output should go for CA. So doesn't it make your task simple if you automate it by using your macro like this? And in a one go of your program, you create multiple data sets. See? Understood? Yes, Meena Pragati.
Yeah, Meena. Sorry. Yeah, Ashwini.
Ashwini. No problem. So looking into this, you find it's complicated, but if you understand this by comparing your this code, you'll get to know that the same thing writing repetitively, why don't you automate it by writing a macro? That's it. So while calling, you call it on any data. Now let's work if it was employee underscore addresses. So let's see how it works. So I'm not again going to compile this macro. It's already compiled. I'm just calling it with this new data set name. So I'll have error. Why? Because my data values are having small case values also. So you don't have anything written with AU, okay, or with small case values. So hence it's giving you, but it's telling AU is data set AU is already open because if you remember earlier from your earlier data, this AU was created, hence it's telling you this information. But if you check, it's see val4, it's telling small AU US. Hence output will go to US, small US. So this data set which is to be created, see the name of the data variable or data sets where it is that code that it's creating the data sets. Yeah. See, it will create 4 data values or data sets. Why? Because in your addresses, you had 2 uppercase AU values and rest all AU and US are small case. Hence, it will create this data base. All right, understood now? So you call this code, it is a general macro. You call it on any table. That's it. So no need of again writing this code again and again. Understood? So in case you have another table, do we have any data? Or we have country column or which has the code of countries. Organization bin. Employee country. Okay. So this all employees are from same country. No, they have AU and US also. So you have 428 of this. So organization bin column is employee country. So let's try this. Employee organization bin. Okay, and this is going to be employee underscore country. So see, it's having only 2 country codes, AU and US. So it's creating accordingly AU dataset and US dataset. Correct? See? Same goes for A. So your base SAS with detailed coding, your macro, which is automating, is giving you a best way of automating your program. So see, it's telling it is creating two data sets. All right. So makes your code more or your programming time is saved, and this is way it is automating your program. All right. Any questions? Any doubts? Looking into it, you find it is complicated, but it's actually the simple code.
Yeah, it's look complicated, so I will go
Yes.
through
Yes.
this video
You
again
take,
one more time.
sure, sure. You need to observe that code carefully,
Hmm.
and then only you will understand. Okay, so answer this code. Given the symbol table below, what is the value of ampersand, ampersand, val, ampersand count?
Which is value 1 AU, value 2 CA.
No, it's telling if you write a macro variable ampersand, ampersand, val, ampersand count, on resolving, what will be its value?
For cutting.
Yes. So always think you have double ampersand, it will
Yeah,
resolve
it
to
will
single.
do single.
Yeah.
So it will be ampersand val,
Well,
whereas in first scan itself, ampersand count. So what is the value of count? 7. Correct? So in first scan, it will resolve ampersand val 7. And in second scan or in second processing time, ampersand val 7. That means you already have a macro variable, ampersand val 7, so it resolves the value as 0. Understood now? This is how it will be.
Oh.
Got it?
Mhm.
Understood now?
yeah.
Oh, yes. So here you read a revision. Okay, so this will take it next time. I won't go this into here. But I would always ask you to open this demo, which is D90A and D90B, and try it out. And look your code and your log. 5D90A and 5D90